Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Dunham, the Principal Analyst for Retail at Ward's Auto. Thank you so much for joining us for the Auto Trader Ward's Auto Fast Chat. Today with us is Paul Parody. He's the Senior Director of Product Management Marketplaces for Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, and Dealer.com, all part of Cox Automotive. And today we're talking about how to successfully deliver the digital promises to today's automotive consumer. Paul, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Thank you. My first question is, with all the strides that the auto industry has made around digitizing the purchase process, would you tell us a little bit about, what consumers can expect today when shopping for a car and also, of course, what opportunities that may present for dealers?
Yeah, so consumers are really looking for the same convenience when they buy a car as they do when they make other online purchases, whether they're buying a refrigerator from a home department store or they're buying a $40,000 vehicle. They want convenience. They want transparency in pricing and how the transaction is going to work. They want personalization, which really just means making it easy for them to move forward, recognizing what they've done. And then they want to be given the option to move forward in that purchase how they want. Do they want to just do a little research and then move to the store? Do they want to start that purchase, or do they want to go all the way through online? Providing that flexibility is really key for us.
Tell us a little bit about how Auto Trader's shopping experience keeps up with those consumer expectations.
Yeah, so our teams do a great job of looking across a lot of e-commerce and marketplace platforms within automotive, but even outside of that. So recognizing what are the trends, what consumers are really looking for or getting accustomed to, and then finding out ways to layer that into our own platform. So you can see that in things like our streamlined listings, where we really removed a lot of content in the search experience to make it easier for consumers to skim through and find the right car to then take a deeper dive on. You can see it in how we personalize our filters and the content we show. So based on the type of vehicle they're looking at, adjusting the content that we show on the actual listing itself, and even the filter set. So kind of looking broadly, if I'm looking at a particular make and model, what are some of the likely filters I'm going to select next, and putting those front and center for the consumer. Now, once they make that selection, right? So once you've decided on a few vehicles and you start diving in a little bit deeper to the vehicle detail page, it becomes about prioritizing the content. There's a lot of information to share with that consumer. You have to share the right information at the right time. So that might be things like right when you hit a vehicle, looking at pricing, imagery, specific vehicle attributes, making sure that's front and center. Then within our experiences, we're really lucky we get to tap into Cox Automotive data sets and find out what are unique vehicle attributes that set that particular VIN from another vehicle that they're looking at. So not all Camrys are the same. And so making sure that they see that and understand that in an easy way. Also providing KBB valuation, so a trusted name around valuations, giving pricing context to that consumer so they feel a little bit more comfortable with what they're seeing and what the price is. And then also surfacing some educational content to make it easy for that consumer to really reaffirm that the maybe make model they're looking at is right for them. So pulling in ratings and reviews, consumer ratings and reviews, but also expert ratings and reviews. And then once they're kind of ready to move forward, providing more and more content to create peace of mind. And that really just means making that consumer feel comfortable taking the next step in their journey. So surfacing things like warranty or buyback information, letting them know it's okay to take another step. And then giving them those options, like I mentioned before, whether that's moving into a digital retailing tool or a credit application. We really make it easy for our sellers to activate and turn those types of capabilities on their inventory.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen recently, and of course, your points are well taken that all, say, Camrys are not created equal, but I can't help but notice the EV model boom, if you will. The selection has just increased tremendously, and I'm guessing you're seeing a lot of EV shopper activity on Auto Trader, certainly to research EVs and find out all the details about them. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we recognize that EVs is still a fairly small part of overall vehicle sales, but more and more consumers are researching them. They're putting it in their consideration set, as we like to call it. And as more models come out, it's getting harder and harder to understand what might be the right vehicle for them in that alternative fuel category. What we've tried to do in the experience is really just make it very clear to that consumer that they are looking at an alternative fuel vehicle and what the differences are. What's a traditional hybrid versus a plug-in hybrid versus a full EV, making that really front and center. And then pulling in some of the data points that we know consumers have the most questions about. So what is the charging time, if you will? What is the range? There's a lot of concerns around range and having range anxiety. So making sure that's very clear to the consumer. And then MPGE, so that equivalency to MPG for this category, just putting that front and center to the consumer, and then layering in some education, because that's a lot of where they're at right now, doing the research and shopping, even if they're not always moving forward with the purchase.
That has to be just such a boon because to the consumers, because I would think, again, with all the models coming out and so forth, it's difficult to find the right EV for a particular shopper. So those are some great details that Auto Trader certainly offers. Is there anything else you'd like to mention on that?
As more and more models come out and the industry matures a bit in that space, we will continue to layer in more education content and then more data points around the vehicles themselves. Think of things like battery health, which is really coming to mind as more and more used EVs are coming onto the market. So it's a continuously evolving area, and we're going to make sure that we're providing the right type of content to consumers so they can make the decision.
You've mentioned a lot of ways that Auto Trader helps streamline the shop to buy experience and even how dealers can, use your information for digital retailing steps to allow consumers to move ahead and certainly, hopefully, to purchase, get into that funnel. Can we circle back just a little bit and talk about personalization and the need for transparency? I know that you feel and Auto Trader feels, certainly Cox Automotive does, that that's important to consumers. So how does Auto Trader deliver?
Yeah, it's hugely important to consumers. You have to have that transparency to create that trust so that they feel comfortable moving forward in that purchase, especially as we are really providing the option to do more and more online. It's one thing if you're just connecting with the seller. It's a very different thing if you're starting to apply for credit, right? And starting to schedule a delivery and things like that. So creating that trust, providing that transparency is key. One of the ways we've really been able to do that is through our Kelley Blue Book My Wallet tool. And what that is it's really a consumer shopping tool that lets that shopper work through their key pieces of their deal earlier on. So instead of selecting a vehicle and then working through payments, it really puts the control in the hands of that consumer by saying, what are some desired term lengths for you? What does your credit range look like? Are you bringing money to the table? Because that's going to bring down your total payments. And using that up front, right? And saying, hey, this is probably a reasonable budget for you. And then every car you look at is going to be personalized to you and what your wallet is showing. And so it's been really helpful for consumers to better understand what that purchasing power is. And one of the great things about it is we take all that information they've provided, then we really match it up with what the seller has told us. So who are their financing partners, things like that. So that as that consumer moves forward, it's easier and easier to see how that information that they've provided, their personal financial position, is going to apply to that vehicle in real time. So we leverage things like Dealer Track to really pull in real-time interest rates And then we pass that information forward. So they don't have to re-enter it again after every car they touch, like a lot of tools out there.
What a great tool that is for the consumer, so they can, especially in this day and age, they can figure out exactly what a vehicle is going to cost them and kind of
That's right.
compare and contrast that way. I'm curious though, say I'm on there and I've done this and I've done all my due diligence. Does any of the information that I've developed, does any of that go to the dealer, once they submit a lead?
Yeah, it does actually. So that information that the consumer enters can go into Accelerate My Deal or digital retailing products. It also goes into the leads that consumer submits. And it's really key for our sellers to see that information, as you can imagine, because then they start from a better place. It's not somebody kicking the tires. It's a very engaged consumer that is providing some information to help that dealer better craft the conversation. Maybe they need to transition them into another vehicle. Well, they already have a lot of the key pieces from that consumer, and they can do that easier. And so having that pass to the dealer in a lead has been really helpful for our sellers to close those deals faster.
Again, it sounds like a terrific tool, terrific information, terrific research. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate this, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nancy.